I normally have quite a bit of time to prepare these, and Johnny called me about 2 o'clock this afternoon, told me that he wasn't feeling well and he needed me to teach, so we're going to do the best we can. Thankfully, we're just going to be going through the Sermon on the Mount things that we've been doing, but this time, instead of just preaching at you, we're going to have discussion. If the teens will admit what I try to do in class and participate, I am big on, I'll ask you a question, I'll wait until somebody answers. So I definitely want you guys to participate and speak up in this class. And if you have a thought or anything like that, let me know. I don't know why this does this. There we go. Cool. So we're studying not for show giving. What comes to your mind when you think of giving? Okay.
Contribution on Sunday.
Contribution on Sunday. Oh, sorry, Dawn. Can you make sure this mic is unmuted? Normally we don't, but that mic can kind of pick you guys up when you talk, when we're answering questions. And I had a few people ask me about that, so if you can make sure the ambient mic is unmuted. Okay, what else do you think of when you hear the word giving?
Helping somebody.
Okay, helping somebody.
And
Not expecting what?
anything.
Not expecting anything in return. That's a big part of it that we'll get into tonight. Not expecting quite a few things when you do give. So we'll start with the introduction. Our main text tonight will be in Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. If you want to turn there, we'll read that here in just a minute. So question, do we like to be praised? It's kind of a no-brainer question. It's not, if you polled the majority of people, they wouldn't say, no, I don't like praise. Most people do like praise.
It's good to validate and be validated.
Yes, good to validate and be validated. So it's something that we not only enjoy, it's something that we need. It's something that ourselves crave and need every so often. It shouldn't be something that we need all the time, so we go around and constantly seek it. But it is good to be praised, and it's also good to remember to praise others when they've done things good, or even if they mess something up, you could say, this part was really good, but let's work on this part of what you did. So you can praise and give constructive criticism at the same time. So we like to be praised. Studies have been done to show how favorably people respond to compliments. When it is our bosses who compliment us, our work improves. So that's a good thing. So if you are a boss, remember that. If you're not a boss, remind your boss of that you need to give me compliments because then I will work better. And when it is our spouses who compliment us, everything improves. When your spouse notices the things that you're doing and compliments you on them and tells you you're doing a good job and how proud of you they are, it makes everything better and things just seem to go a lot better. So our desire to be praised shows that we respond well to compliments. Have you ever known somebody that doesn't take compliments very well? They may not know what to say, or they just like, well, no, that's not correct. You shouldn't say that. They just don't take compliments well. But if we have a desire to be praised, that shows that we respond well to compliments. We like them, we like the compliments, and we'll do things so that we may get complimented more.
It is uncomfortable when you're not used to it, but then if you just learn just 2 little words, it will help. And if
Yep.
someone gives you a compliment about anything,
Mhm.
you say thank you.
Yep. And that goes a long way, because if somebody's constantly giving you compliments and you don't say thank you or anything, they may stop giving you compliments.
And then you'll get more comfortable.
Mhm.
Thank you really becomes kind of awkward.
Yeah, it becomes second nature to say thank you, and you get a lot more comfortable receiving those compliments. So, why does God warn us that we are not to practice righteousness to be seen by others? We'll read just the first verse of Matthew chapter 6. It says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven." So, Jesus here just addressed several misinterpretations by the Jews where we are here in the scripture. And the book asks the question, how do you correlate this passage and Matthew 5:14 through 16? There it is. If somebody will read that for us, Matthew 5:14 through 16. George?
You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven.
Okay, so what is this passage saying here? Those three verses. We are a what? We're the light of the world. Where are we supposed to be?
Living our lives in the world.
Living our lives, and we're letting our light shine before men so that they can see the good works and glorify God who is in heaven. So just one chapter later, it says, "Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them, otherwise you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven." What gives?
It's a matter of the heart.
Okay, very much. As with a lot of these discussions and a lot of these studies and the things that Jesus goes through, definitely matters of the heart determines whether it is okay or not to do, or okay or not to do publicly. There's a huge difference between doing works that are seen and doing works that are done to be seen. I remember learning this in elementary school. I don't know what grade, but they correlated it with the word integrity. You do it because it needs done, not just because you're going to receive praise for it. It's great if somebody sees it, but your motives and what your heart is feeling need to be correct and pure, so that it's not the main reason that you're doing it, just so that you can get the praise for it. So Jesus here goes over 3 classic acts of righteousness that the Jews would do just to be seen of men. And we're not going to read all these, but just a list if you're writing down notes. And the first 4 verses, he talks about them giving so that other people would notice them. He talks in verses 7 through 15 about them praying openly so that they're seen by men and get the recognition from them. And then in verses 16 through 18, he talks about fasting, which we've discussed a little bit previously. And Jason was it Jason talking about it on Sunday? I don't know. I edit all the videos, so I get them all intertwined. So that's the introduction, and we'll spend a little bit of time under the heading of giving with a righteous heart. What does the word righteous mean?
Done with good motives.
Okay. Done with good motives. Anybody else have a different definition? How?
In the sight of God.
Right in the sight of God. Yeah, both those. Pure heart, yeah. So you're giving with a righteous heart, giving with a pure heart, giving with the right intentions, and giving. What was the first one you said? Something,
without expecting anything in return.
yeah,
No.
something in the sight of God, I think.
Right in the side of God.
Yeah, so giving correctly in the sight of God. So we'll be discussing that. So we'll go ahead and read the next three verses, verses 2 through 4. So he says in verse 1, beware of this, because if you do, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. But then he goes on and tells you what you should do. He says, so when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. So what's the very first thing that Jesus says not to do? Give you a hint. It's in verse 2.
Don't announce it or sound a trumpet, call attention to yourself.
Yeah, don't announce it. Don't sound a trumpet. Don't bring attention to yourself. Don't say, I'm giving $100. Everybody look at this. I'm putting it here. Or, hey, this person needs food. This is what I'm giving them. Look at me. I'm so great. That's not what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to announce it. We're not supposed to sound a trumpet. The language that Jesus uses here, sounding a trumpet, is kind of interesting to think about, because it makes you ask the question, is he speaking literally or figuratively? There may have been people back then that would blow a trumpet and sound it and say, look at me, look at what I'm doing, everybody pay attention. But what are ways that people do this today, besides holding up the money and saying, hey, I'm giving this?
Releasing their tax information.
Okay, releasing their tax information. What else?
See a lot of people on social media
Yep.
take a video.
I'll lump in YouTube with that. Social media, YouTube, online things. There's a very, very popular young man. His name is Jimmy. He goes by the handle of Mr. Beast. He goes around giving away millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars. And people enjoy watching it because it's fun to watch and interesting, and he always does something interesting with it, but he's out there saying, look, I'm giving all of this money away for free. Now, he's not really doing it to say, look at me, I'm so great. He's doing it just so he can give people money and help them out. But when people say, post on social media or things like that of, hey, I just gave $100 to this person, or to this other thing, or to this charity. Charities might be a little different. But still, you're doing it so that you can get the recognition, not just to do it because you felt like it or it was the right thing to do, but because you wanted the recognition.
So that young man, you say he's not putting it on social media to be noticed, so why is he putting it out there anyway?
It's a really weird concept, but it's so he can make more money. But the reason he wants to make more money is so he can give more money away to people that need it. It's right on the line.
Well, okay, so if that, if that's his motive, then he's going about it very well if it's working, so.
Yeah, he gets money from sponsors and just people watching the videos, and he doesn't have anything extravagant because he wants to give everything away. So that one's kind of right on the line in my mind, but
Yeah, I can see it, but, okay.
I don't know if you guys have seen. Just had the thought. This happens a lot to me. I don't know. Guess we'll move on. So Jesus may be saying, don't literally sound a trumpet because everybody's going to look your way. But also, if you take it figuratively, look at the same end result of doing something or saying something or posting something so that everybody looks your way and pays attention to you and is like, oh, that person just gave this much. And probably didn't have the right heart because they just wanted the attention for it. So, question. If you do things for the wrong reasons or to be seen, what does Jesus say is the reward that you'll receive? Yep, so they'll be honored by men. And truly I say to you, they have received the reward in full. What is the reward that they've received? It's,
They got the accolades they were.
they got the praise. But it says that they got it in full. What do they mean by that? That's all they got. They got the praise of men, and they're not getting anything else. So they got what they wanted, but didn't get what they needed. So in verses 3 and 4, it says, give alms quietly. That's what the book describes it. What do you guys consider the definition of the word alms? Sorry? Gifts. Giving gifts to people, giving things to people quietly. That doesn't mean you need to go up to them and whisper and say, here's $100. But don't wave it around and advertise what you're doing. But it says to give them quietly. But there's even more. Oh, sorry. They really like telling you to picture scenes in this book. So it says, picture that you are passing by someone in need, and your right hand gives the one in need, while your left hand does not even know about it. What does that mean? What does that imply about the giving?
Very secretive.
Okay, it's very secretive. 99% of the time, your hands probably know what the other one's doing. They're all connected to the same body, but if one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing, it's very secretive. It's a very, very distinct visualization that Jesus gives here to try to get the point across, get the image into our heads and into the Jews' heads that he was talking to here in this passage. But it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
I will say that every once in a while, a story will come out where a very anonymously, somebody has given a profound amount of money to an organization that really needs it.
Mhm.
Those are the kinds of stories I like.
Yeah, and the person didn't want recognized, and that's why they said anonymously. So either there's that, or somebody just found out about it and wanted to say thank you in general so they could let whoever know, hopefully, hear their thanks.
You don't keep account of it to make yourself feel better.
Yes. You don't have a checklist of, okay, this week I've given this much money to this many people and done this many good things. Exactly. You don't keep track of everything that you're doing just to make yourself feel better about it. So there's even more to it than it being done in secret, even though that is the main point. There are 3 subpoints. It shows that it is something that is done often. And what they're getting at with that is when you do an action, do anything, ride a bike, drive a car, what did you have to do first before you could just get in a car and drive, or get on a bike and ride? You had to learn it. What's the best way to learn? Practice. Practice, practice, practice. George, you didn't just get on the mound and be able to pitch immediately the first time or catch. Practice is what makes perfect, is what they say. So if something is being done often, you're used to it, it's something that you can be good at, but it's also, if you're good at it, it's easier for you to keep it a secret. It's something that you know the best way to go about it, to not make it a public spectacle, to not make it something where everybody looks at you, and to not make it something where you need the attention for what you did. But when you practice it, you can get better at doing it in secret. It shows that it is something done quickly. What's the best way to try to make sure that nobody sees you doing something? Do it quick. If you take your time and sit there, and I don't know why I'm fixated on a $100 bill, giving it to somebody, but if you're sitting here and you're folding it and you're holding it up in your hand, and you're looking around, seeing who you can give it to and who needs it, somebody's going to notice that. But if you just pull it out of your pocket and give it to somebody and walk away, you're doing it quickly, and it's a lot easier to be done in secret. And again, that comes with practice so that it can be done, or something that is done often so that it can be done quickly. And this last point really made me think about it. It shows that it is something done with little discussion or thinking. What do they mean by this point? What do you guys think?
I think I'll disagree with the thinking part, because I think there has to be some purpose behind it.
There does. Most of the time, I would argue.
Normally, the more time you have to think about something, the more time you have to talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. There's so many things that fall under that the more you think about it, you start maybe overthinking it and talk yourself out of it and say, well, no, I don't need to do that, or there's something better I can do. Just the different things that we tell ourselves to talk ourselves out of it. Yeah, most definitely. Anything else?
It shows that it's a habit, not something you had to think about.
That's a good way of putting it. It's a habit. It's something, like it says in the first 2 points, it's done often and it's done quickly. You don't have to think about it. You just know, this is what I do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it quickly. I'm going to do it often. And you don't have to think about it. You don't have to say, well, who am I going to do this to today? You just go right and do it. Go right ahead and do it, and it's just instinctive. So we are told to give, but we just need to make sure that we have the right motives and the right attitude when we give. As much as we like praise, like we discussed in the beginning, we must never forget that the greatest praise and compliment will be from our Lord looking at us and saying, well done, good and faithful servant. It's something that is sometimes said to make kids think about what they're doing, and hopefully make adults think about what they're doing, but no matter how secretive something is, God always knows what's going on. We know that from Jonah. He went and hid, and God still knew what his motives were and where he was going and what he was doing. But no matter what, God knows what people are doing, and he knows the motives behind it. But we should also apply that here to the positive of getting that praise from God, and him saying it, looking at us and saying, well done, good and faithful servant. Okay, part 2, we have a lot more discussion here. So giving with a gracious hand, we're going to read 4 different passages. I'll go ahead and put them all up there. So we'll go ahead and turn to Acts chapter 2. Do you guys normally read out loud up here?
Yeah,
Okay. We always do down in the teen class, but
it's usually the teacher that does them.
yeah,
It's pretty quiet tonight, so.
it is. Okay, Acts chapter 2, verses 43 and 44. Somebody will read that for us.
And awe came upon every soul. Many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common.
Okay. So they had a feeling of awe, and those who believed were together and had all things in common. Now go over 2 more chapters to Acts chapter 4, verses 32 through 37. My man-written chapter heading here says sharing among believers. Somebody will read verses 32 through 37.
Now the full number of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and no one said that any of these things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in common. And with great power the apostles were giving their testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was upon them all. There was not a needy person among them, for as many as were owners of lands or houses sold them and brought the proceeds of what they had sold, and laid it at the apostles' feet, and it was distributed to each as any had need. Thus Joseph, who was also called by the apostles Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, a Levite, a native of Cyprus, sold a field that belonged to him, and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet.
Okay, so there was a congregation, they believed, and they were of one heart and one soul. And it says not one of them claimed that anything belonged to him or was his own, but that all things were common property to them. Nobody was in need. They shared everything. They not only shared everything, but they made sure that everybody had what they needed. Let's turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Second Corinthians chapter 8, verses 7 and 12.
And as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in all earnestness, and in our love for you, see that you excel in this act of grace also. Verse 12,
Mm-hmm.
for if the readiness is there, it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have.
Okay, and keeping a finger there, turn to Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2. Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. So the passage in Galatians and the 2 Corinthians doesn't necessarily focus on giving things to each other. The other two verses were talking about the people sharing everything. Nobody was in need of things. But there in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, says, just as you abound in everything, and talks about in faith and utterance and knowledge and in all earnestness, see that you abound in this gracious work also. Then in verse 12, for if the readiness is present, it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have. So how does that verse correlate with the first two verses that we read there in Acts 2 and Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 4? How are those verses connected? Specifically focus on in 2 Corinthians chapter 8 on verse 12. Let me read it again. For if the readiness is present, it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have. And I've learned in the teen class sometimes I make correlations that they don't think of, but it makes sense in my head.
I guess you can't give what you don't have.
Okay? Can't give what you don't have.
Well, we automatically think that giving is monetarily or physical.
Mm-hmm.
Don does a really good job when he's doing communion and then the giving. He makes a point to say that it's not just about giving the money, it's about giving our time,
Right.
other aspects as well.
Yeah, there's so much more than just money and acts, physical things that you can do. But in Acts chapter 2 and Acts, excuse me, I don't know why I can't say that. Acts chapter 2 and 4, it said they were doing what to each other? They were making sure that everybody had enough. Made sure that they had everything that they needed. So correlate that here in 2 Corinthians 8 verse 12. says it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have. See where I'm going with this a little more? That if we share things with people, they'll have everything they need, whether it's a physical, material thing or spiritual, mental support type thing that they may need. But when we have all of the things that we need, verse 12 says, if the readiness is present, so if we're ready and we're ready to go, it's acceptable because we have what we need. We're not going to have, it's not according to what we don't have, but when we truly come together and share what we do have with each other, we make sure that we have what we need and we can share that with other people as well. Like I said, these sometimes make really good sense in my mind, but you guys can't read my mind sometimes. Found out the teens are really bad at reading my mind. And then in Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. So again, this really comes to another thing that's not monetary. It's not always a physical act of bearing somebody's burdens. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you need to go help somebody physically to help them out. But sometimes it can be just as much as being there. Just be there with them, spend some time with them, listen, give them advice if they want it. Sometimes give them advice if they don't want it. But just be there for somebody. And it says by doing this, we are fulfilling the law of Christ. We shouldn't want to do anything more than that. Our top goal should be to fulfill God's law, to fulfill the law of Christ, and to know that God is looking down on us and saying, well done, good and faithful servant, knowing that we're doing what he has told us to do. So, what are some ways that we can give? And Dawn, I'm actually going to control the computer here for a minute because I don't have a whiteboard up here.
Michael, for you,
Yes, sir?
move on to that subject. It's really difficult to talk about the giving of the Christians or the saints without really looking at 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 8.
Mm-hmm.
And that almost has to be a part of your lesson tonight.
Yeah. A good overall thing with that is don't give a little, don't do just enough to, don't just do a little and enough to get by. But yeah, 9 verses 6 through 8 say, now I say this, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must do just as he has purposed in his heart, not grudgingly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed. Most definitely, that's a fantastic point. And this helps us understand to what level we need to give and to help other people. Or as it says in Galatians 6, to bear one another's burdens. Does your boss tell you did a good job when you do half of the job and even that you did poorly? No, they get on you and they talk to you and say, you need to fix this. But when you do it in the correct way and just with the right attitude and doing it bountifully, as it says here in 2 Corinthians 9, that many good things. The grammar is terrible there. A lot of good things will come to you because of that. And especially focused on verse 7, not grudgingly or under compulsion. If you're being forced or you're forcing somebody else to go and give, they're not going to be that happy about it. I know.
I think the part that the man has to decide what's within his own heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, and
It's not the same every week.
exactly.
And sometimes we get in the practice of just throwing money into a pot. And we're really not looking into our heart and saying, should I be doing this week?
Yeah, we want to make sure it doesn't just become routine. We want to make sure we're truly looking into our heart and understanding what we're doing and making sure that it's the right decision for what God would want us to do. Okay, I don't know why this won't let me go over, Dawn.
You know, but we're trying to get other people to do things. I know I've heard, since nobody's here, Mary McNally used to do that. She used to volunteer her family for this stuff.
Yeah,
They did mention.
and that's the second time we've mentioned, or I've heard Mary McNally mentioned this week.
Really?
Oh yeah, good lady.
I think about her a lot.
Oh yeah. Okay, so like I said, since I don't have a whiteboard here, I'm gonna write them down here and list them to y'all. But the next question was, what are different ways that you can give? We kind of talked about this in the beginning, but now we've talked about this. Think of physical ways and also the way you give. But what are some of those ways? Time. What else? Okay. Hopefully I spell everything right tonight. Okay, what else? When you think,
Without grumbling.
I'm sorry?
Without grumbling.
Without grumbling and with the right attitude. What else? Secretly.
Maybe
Visiting, so.
Okay.
visiting or taking a meal with someone.
Okay.
The very first scripture we read said to make sure God gets the glory for whatever you do.
Definitely. Definitely making sure that God gets the glory.
I like this, I like that word secret. What you do in secret, God sees it.
Mm-hmm.
I really like
And I think I mentioned this, but you know, a lot of times we say that to try to tell people, well, you can't hide anything from God, but it's also definitely in a very positive light of you can do this and nobody may know, but God will know.
But
So,
to me, it just makes it so super special.
yeah, and it's almost even more special when you know that God's the only one that knows. Most definitely. The best example I can think of for this next one that it's got on the list is you're driving down the road and somebody's car is broken down and you stop for them. That's not planned, that's just spontaneous. But along those same lines, there can be planned giving. If we truly, going back to what Jim was talking about, having the right mind, having the right purpose in our heart, we shouldn't be surprised when the plate comes around every Sunday and think, oh, I forgot. We should know and have set aside what we will give and have that right purpose in our heart so that we can give the way that we're supposed to.
You know, it's really, I think it's really cool when somebody will come to you and they will say, I know you're a Christian and you never told me.
They can tell by how you're acting and how you stand out from people and some of the things you
What
do.
you do and not.
Because you can definitely tell the difference between somebody doing something because it's the right thing to do and somebody doing something just for the praise. Most definitely. And then the last one they give here, emergency giving. There can be things, there can be situations that pop up that somebody needs help right away, and it's not going to be good if they don't get the help. And so we try to help out whenever we can, but you could call that emergency giving.
I think something that's kind of coming to a thought in my head at listening to all this is, we talked about, being deliberate, but yet, not overthinking it, but if you wanna be spontaneous, you almost need to plan.
Yeah.
Because you budget your finances, you budget, maybe you don't get your schedule so crowded with things that you actually have the time to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Maybe you set aside a certain amount of money in your, income so that if these things come along, you are able to give in an
Mhm.
emergency type situation.
So it's spontaneous, but it's planned.
It's planned, it's intentional,
Yeah.
it's,
I like that word a lot.
you kind of come from, it's your point of view to start out with, you know?
Yes. Okay, if I'm gonna get done, I better keep going and stop talking about the list. But yes, very great point. Because, yeah, if you're spending money that you haven't budgeted, and so you're not gonna be able to do something, it's not always the best. Sometimes that's what needs done, because that person needs something more than you. But yeah, it's most definitely a good idea to plan in case of spontaneity. So, yeah, that's very good. I'm going to minimize that and save that. Go back.
Is there any way you can send that to me so I can put it up on the PowerPoint here?
Say what?
Is there any way you can send it to me so I can put it on the PowerPoint? On the live stream?
Your list.
Oh, I think you can do that while it's up here. Should be able to.
I'm not seeing it here.
If you hit the PowerPoint button on the Stream Deck, shouldn't it show up there?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Make sure the people on the stream see the list that we made.
IT guy that you are.
Okay. So, last few questions. Discussion time, which we've been having already. Why do you think that we struggle in regards to giving, or what do we struggle the most with giving? So, if you think we struggle, what do we struggle with the most, or do we even struggle with giving? And you don't need to give personal examples if you don't want to, but what do you think we as a society, or just whatever your mind went to when you read this question, what do we struggle with?
You wanna hang on to everything.
It's my money. I need it for me. I worked for it. But what's the truth behind that?
Selfishness.
It's selfishness. And where did that money actually come from? God. Everything that we have comes from God, no matter what it is. Yes, we worked for it, but we wouldn't be able to work for it unless God had made everything and allowed us to be able to work for it. Yeah. So being selfish is a big problem when it comes to giving. What else?
Not knowing what needs are out there.
Not knowing what needs are out there. How can we be better at that? Share. It definitely a two-way street. Share and ask. When we go up to somebody and say, "How you doing?" What's our immediate answer normally? I'm fine. What if we're not fine? We need to make sure that when we go and ask that question that we actually mean what we're asking and not just do it in passing, because if they say, "I'm not doing very good," you don't want your response to be, "Oh, good." You want your response to be, "I'm sorry, can we talk about it?" or something to that extent.
Yeah, be careful asking me. I'm just saying.
But we need to take the time to. What was the first point that was made here? Sorry. I got off on that tangent and lost the point.
Not to be selfish.
Yeah, not to be selfish was with the first one.
And when you ask somebody how they're doing.
Yeah, I just don't remember the main point I was making with that. But, if you don't know, tell people what you need help with or what you need help with giving, and ask people. And that can go monetarily, physically, spiritually, mentally, anything like that. We should We should feel complete as a body so that we're able to go and ask people for help or for prayers, but we should also be able to go and find out what people need. We should go to them and ask and talk with them. We need to make sure we're family. We need to make sure that we know what's going on. We are one body, and we should know what's going on. You're going to try to ring those bells soon, aren't you?
Receiving is difficult at times.
It is. Receiving is difficult sometimes. I've told this story in the teen class, but there was a time in college when Mandy's great-grandmother passed away, and we had no money. There was no way we had gas money to make it even out of the state, much less all the way to Texas. And next thing we know, somebody's coming up to us with a envelope full of $100 and says, whoever donated this said, please go. They don't want to be known. Again, that goes to the secret part of it, but it's not easy. We want to thank people. We want to think that we're good enough or that we've got enough, but sometimes we need help.
I think one of the things I struggle with the most is cynicism. We
Yeah.
get so cynical
Yeah.
because of society.
Yep. I struggle with that too. And the biggest thing I struggle with that is the people that you see on the corner. I don't know if that's exactly how you were defining it.
Well, and if you've ever been the person or know the person that's in charge of benevolence at your congregation,
Mm-hmm.
they could probably tell many stories that would make them cynical if they allowed themselves to be.
Yeah.
Instead of remembering, you do what you can, then it's up to them if they're doing right.
Yeah, and you have to remember that they may be cynical, but not everybody has the same intentions. So, yeah, most definitely. So what are some things that we can do to overcome these things that we struggle with or that society struggles with? What can be done about that?
If you hear of a need, like just in conversation, I've heard a couple of things sometimes, and I'll talk to Clint Smith,
Mm-hmm.
and before you know it, and you don't really, talk about the secret and not knowing, but you find out it got done either by him or somebody he knew that could help. And
Yeah.
I think it's good to have like a contact to go to. Hey, I overheard someone can't get their Christmas lights off their roof. Can you, and then next thing you know, their gutters are clean,
Yeah.
their Christmas lights are down, or whatever it is, So some of it is just knowing who can help.
Yeah, and that has some to do with being a part of the body, know who does what and what they're capable of and things like that, and knowing each other so that you would know who to go to, or knowing each other well enough that you know who to go to ask who to go to. That makes
Friend
sense.
of a friend of a friend.
Yes, friend of a friend. Okay, what else can we do? What did we talk about in the very beginning? What makes perfect? Practice it. There are so many things that we can practice to be better at, that we can practice to be going more towards perfection with these things. But when we talk about the doing things often, quickly, and with little discussion or thinking, if we do these things with practice and practice and practice, we're going to get a lot better with it, and it's going to be second nature really quick for us. But what's the number one thing that we should do about it? If we need to overcome the mindsets of struggling in regards to giving, or just society in general struggling with it, what's the first thing we should do? Pray. Very first thing we should do about is pray. God will help us. We know that God hears our prayers. We know that God will be with us and that he will help us. Second thing they list is do not limit God. Sometimes we think that's too much, it can't be taken care of. But we need to understand that God can do anything. Now, he has his will, his own way of doing it, and it may not be what we thought the answer would be, but we need to make sure that we're not limiting God. What we,
Michael,
go on.
I can't, and Greg's not here,
Mhm.
right? But, how many times have we heard him say you can't outgive God?
Yep.
And, is that what you're meaning by limit?
Yes.
Yeah. If we keep giving and, things are provided to ourselves sometimes or
Mhm.
whatever, and just having that attitude, you can't outgive
Yep.
God. He's just gives his blessings overflowing the cup and shaken down, stirred and overflowing, and
Yep.
he's more generous than we could ever be.
Yep, definitely cannot outgive God. What we discussed a few minutes ago is understand that everything that you have belongs to God. Understand the good that giving brings. Understand the blessings that it brings, and understand the rewards that it brings. Really quickly, Luke chapter 6, verse 38. Says, "Give, and it will be given to you. They will pour into your lap a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return." So, we know that if you give, that it will be given to you. 3 quick points in conclusion. To have a righteousness that exceeds, you have to have the right motives. Do not do things just to be seen by others, or just so that people will see what you're doing and give you the praise. Don't make that your only motive. And let us be a giving people, and let us have a giving spirit, whether it's financially, materially, monetarily, your time, anything like that. We need to be a giving people and have a giving spirit. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's your.